Hello and welcome to today's super exciting webcast about what's new in CA PPM. Bob Werner, our longtime pre-sales executives here at CA, will take us through all the great features that have been baked into version 15.2, including new role-based user experiences, specifically around resource management and others, a deeper integration with Agile Central, and new features around that helps you find the right people much faster or less work using telescoping and pinning and so on. Before I hand over to my good friend Bob, I just want to draw your attention to the bottom of the page. There's a Q&A window. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in there and we will address them at the end of the event. With that, I hand over to Bob. It's all yours.
Well, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. This is Bob Werner. I have been with CA for 11 years, and I focus on the product. I've got a couple slides, just two, and then we'll get straight into the product. So I think as we talk about the 15 series or the 15 version, if you will, the slide I have up, Experience is Everything, is really what it's all about. If you look at the product in general, it's the broadest and deepest product in the market. And the perspective is how do we take something that could be called complex and make it simple? And that's been the focus on the 15 series. So we'll talk about what we're doing for you internally. We also expect that, as you look at, what was in the credits there, the Millennials and so forth, as you have these new people coming on board, it's going to make it easier for them to work through the product, be able to adapt from what they bring from home, on their social devices to the workplace. And so, that has been our focus on the 15 series. So as said, we're going to focus on 15.2, but I think it makes a little sense just to discuss 15.1 for a second here, and I'm just bringing up the slide. And the real focus is 15.1 was the start, right? I mean, the perspective is saying, we started the adaptive project management or light project management and the components that were there. We started the collaboration capabilities, and we put in the timesheet and approval capabilities in the 15 series. As we move to 15.2, we've expanded on some of those project management capabilities by enhancing collaboration. We've added document management. As mentioned, the Agile timesheet, we won't really focus on that today, but having that integration between Agile Central, so you have one common place to be able to enter your time if you're using both an Agile and a traditional methodology. And then the focus of probably for the most part of today will be resource management and all the components that come with it. And it really is our first foray into resource management. And I think the perspective is pretty interesting because what we've done is we've taken something that's been in 5 or 10 places on your system. You go here to find out what the problem is. Then you go here to change the problem, or you go there to change the problem or fix it. We've taken that and put it in all in one place, and hopefully you'll like what you see. I'm very excited about it for as long as I've been here to see this new user experience in general. The customers that I went out and presented to, and even the Gartners of the world are very excited to see what we've done. I think it's unique to us in the industry, and without further ado, we'll jump into the product. So I've logged in as Dana, and this is my first screen. And so you see this is the 15.1 pieces, and we'll explore on the rest of the 15.2 components. But when I look at this, the first thing I want to make sure you understand is that if you're an existing customer and you're looking or thinking about upgrading, when you go and get this experience, you have this, plus you have all of the traditional components of the application. So you saw I clicked the link, and I did it pretty quickly. The perspective here is what I see now is that same list screen, right, of those projects that Dana has access to. And this is the view that you're used to. So as I go through the presentation today, I'm going to show you some of the new components. Not all of the product is in the new user experience, but you always have access by going back to the traditional view, what we're now calling Classic, to see those components that may not be available. So it may be that at some point you switch back and forth, or you may decide that you want to expose certain user groups in your organization to the new user experience. The value proposition there is that you enter the information once, that information is exposed either in Classic, as we see here, or in the new methodology or new user experience. And so for your perspective, you have access to it. You can fully use the solution. You don't lose any capabilities. You don't have to do re-entry. You know, this product is just getting better and better based on the user experience. So as we look at this main screen, right, you're going to see some consistency as I go through. Each one of these cards represents a project, and you'll see the metrics that are here associated with them. So at a glance, you have visibility into what's going on from this project, whether it needs help, you know, we spent all our money or whatever. As I drill in, that same component are at the top of the screen. So we're keeping consistency as we go through the process. So it's not where am I or how did I get there or where am I going. You know, we're trying to keep a concept that we have the visualization of where I am and the components that I have, in this case, the effort and budget, and then I'm brought to the information. As we look, the menu's on the left, so as I want to transfer, as you saw me earlier, I went to the Classic PPM. You can see the different things that you want to go to here. But again, we're trying to keep it clean and simple relative to the project information in this particular scenario so that you know where you are and you know where you're going. So the first enhancement that we have is Conversations was released in 15, but now we have the ability to reply, so it's not just a single thread, so you can reply to individual components. And you also have the ability to @mention. So when I put the @ in there, what that means, it's a Twitter-like capability, right? And so, you know, I could say grab my team, and what that's going to do is it's going to put this information in here. It's going to highlight that individual or the team of people, right? And then what it's going to do as I enter information in this drop-down and put an @mention, the @mention is going to highlight the notification button for that individual. So when they log in, they will see that, hey, they have some notifications, so they'll know that they need to go to the conversation, and they can click on it from the notification to find out what's going on about them. If you don't notify them, then they just have that stream of consciousness relative to the project, so they have that information available for them. So the other capabilities that are here, and this is 15.1, so we won't spend time here, but you have the task capabilities. You have the status report that as you complete things, it automatically gets updated with the next couple weeks of tasks that are available. And then a new component, we've added document management. And so this is the traditional document management that you had today. We've exposed it in the new user experience. You have the folder structure, as you did before. One of the comments that we had before is, well, how do I get and navigate back once I drill in? And so now we've added this folder structure on the side so you can navigate anywhere you need to go. So you can drill straight from here, and if you get somewhere, you can just grab that. So it's making it cleaner and easier to navigate the folder structure instead of the back that you used to have to do. If we look at the different scenarios, one of the other features that we've added, if we look into, you know, the booth setup capabilities as we drill in, you'll notice that we have the different documents here as we have in the past, but we also have this ability to tag. So now you can create your own set of tags, and then you can search not only by the documents themselves, but you can search by the capabilities of these tags. So if you say, you know, whatever that comment is, it's going to make these up, it's going to colorize them for you, and then you have another way of searching through your documents. So now looking at this project management experience, you know, we've added these two functionalities, you know, around the document capabilities as well as the conversation capabilities. We've also expanded time entry. I'm not going to focus on that today either, but on the time entry, it's the same that you had in 15.1, but the perspective is now you can enter time for others. So if you're a resource manager or a manager, you have the ability to enter time for others. That's a new feature that's been allotted here. So with that, I'm going to log out from Dana. Well, actually, we'll stay with Dana for just a second because I want to show that she has the resource management capabilities, and this is where we're going to focus today. So this is one common place that you have access to the information, as I mentioned earlier on. you have the capability to see what's going on and as well as to make changes to what's going on relative to your resources. For those folks that are used to using the allocations, this is really a step off the allocation methodology, but it's doing it in one spot for you. It gives you a visualization. We tried to add additional visualizations to simplify, and so where you see green, that might be good. Red might be bad. You know, in this case, it's over or under booked. But this view that I have as Dana, as a project manager, she has visibility into the resources that she has access to. She has visibility to the projects that she's working, and she can stretch between not only her resources, which is she's looking at from this perspective, but she can change that view quickly and say, well, let's look at it from the project's standpoint that I have. So I'm really changing this. You know, marketing calls this I to R, R to I, but the value proposition here is when I'm looking at my information, no longer do I have to go to a project and manage it specifically and then say, okay, now I need to go to the next project. I have all that visibility here to manage and do what I want to do. If I am focused on a specific resource and manage it, then I can go back. And then just depending on my security rights that I have will determine, can I soft book them, can I hard book them, can I just view them? But the value proposition is I have access to the information. I can see where problems are trending, and as I may think about it, I can go in and make changes or identify things that I want to do or differently. So from that perspective, we're looking at this from Dana, the project manager. So she has this resource view. This replaces the views that you might see in the project management. I have all access to them here for her specifically. So I'm going to log out as Dana. And so the perspective with Dana is she may or may not have security access or rights to allow her to manage or make changes to the resources. If you're an open organization and you allow your project managers to staff, then security will drive that she can actually do the staffing right there. If you're an organization that has those duties separated, that you have a project manager that may request a resource and then you have to have some other person, in this case we would call them a resource manager, have that ability to go in and make the changes, then you could have that as well. So I've logged in as Mark now. Mark has the resource management capabilities. He actually has some access to project, just this one project in this case, but the perspective is that, you know, we saw the view of Dana and she had a bunch of projects, and Mark in this case just has the one. So as we go to resource management, his real focus then is around resources. So, ta-da, we say that same view. We're not changing it. It is the same exact scenario, but the perspective is what do I have access to, or how much can I do relative to what I need to get done. So one common place to go get the information. So the first thing I would like to pull out is that I have two things on the screen. I kind of have my resources or projects, right, which I showed you a second ago. And down below, I also have my requests. So if I look at this QA request, these are for Mark, and they're filtered by Mark, and we'll touch on filtering in just a second. As I look, I can see here's the request that's going on, and I have this little blue button. Again, what we've tried to do is give you information so that you can recognize that something's going on without actually having to look at it. In this particular case, this means I have comments behind the scenario. So while I showed you the comment capability in projects, now when we drill into this, we see the comments or conversations that are available for this particular request. So what I have here is the request that's already been written. I can actually go in and go in and find that person. One of the things we've been told when we did the interviews on how to accomplish resource management is that the resource managers actually know their teams. So in this case, it's going to give me the list. I can scroll down, and this has everyone. If I come in and type a specific scenario, a name, or in this case just QA, it gives me those folks that match that. So I can go in and replace or allocate the different folks that I want relative to this in this particular scenario. As with the 15.1 series, it auto-saves, so the things that I've done here have been updated or changed. If I want to change them again, I just simply go in and make that change. So that concept of saying, hey, I typed something, oh, I forgot to hit the save button, lost it, goes away because it automatically does that. The other component that we talked about here is actually this conversation. So as I mentioned, and I probably should have went here first, right, somebody asked me a question, and I just staffed it without actually looking at their question, which is kind of silly. But the focus here is saying we've now added this conversation capability, so we have this collaboration. So if we truly do have a match between a resource manager and a project manager and there's specific elements that they want to do, they don't have to put them in the request itself. They actually can start a conversation, and then we can go back and forth and talk, you know, whatever the concept. So again, now I could do @Dana and say, you know, whatever the capability that I want is, and then I can respond to that conversation. Again, as I mentioned, because I put Dana here, when I close this out, Dana will have this notification up here, so she knows that that's there. This also goes through the process of email, so if you are using email outside, it would email them as well. But what we're seeing more and more is people want to go into the application and they want to interact and manage as they're here. I think the other thing you want to notice, and I mentioned this a little bit from a project management standpoint, but again at the resource management, is we're trying to maintain context. So as I look at this request screen, I see down on the left-hand side, as I opened up and drilled into the different specifics here, when I pop open the conversation, I have access to that information. It drills a pop-up, so I still maintain context to where I am. And then when I get that detail or close out, I'm fine with that. If I want to switch between different scenarios, we look at the different components here, so it'll change this for me so I don't have to look at the different scenarios that are there or close this out. So I really have the capability of accessing the information, trying to keep it as simple as possible, the least amount of clicks to maintain or get through the product. And so the focus here, as we look at these requests, right, is really simplifying that process. I need somebody, great. Let me go find somebody, or I know you want Joe, let me manage that. As I add or make changes to those, on the lower half where I see the requests that I have, the updates to the folks on top are going to also show, so we'll see the differences in their hours. I think the other thing that's really nice about this is this concept of filtering. So right now we filtered by mark. If I click into here, this is a new capability. This takes some of that advanced filtering capabilities that you have in Classic, and as I'm currently filtering by mark, but if I want to continue to filter down by more information, I could say, well, I want a specific investment. I don't want to do all these different things. I really just care about something, right? And then I could go in and I could type the MDM as an example to say I want MDM logistics. And notice how it popped up. I didn't make any typing or whatever, and it shows me I still have these 4 roles for MDM, but now when I open these up, it really is just specific to MDM. So the filtering capability allows you to do multiple levels of filters. It tells you what you're filtering by as you're going through it, and as you want to add filters, you can continue to see the list of these filters that are out here. And then, by the way, if you say, you know what, I don't want just MDM or I don't want just marks, I can go in and change the filter. Now you see I have a bunch of things based on my security access that I want. If I want to go back in and add in mark again, I could, and it'll change that filter capability. So that's about requests and how they are utilized today. Very different than you've done them in the past. Hopefully you believe that's simpler. The focus is, to less clicks as we go through the process. The other thing is as we look at this information, I have both my requests and my resources and or projects here. I can get rid of my request if I need more screen real estate. So now I've maximized this particular component, and I can see all the folks that I want to manage here. And so you'll notice that I have some different indicators out here as I go through the process. And these indicators are meant to help you, again, visualize what's going on with that particular individual. In this case, the little pie chart with the gray area represents the soft book. So if I open up Alex here as an example, I'll see that he's got part of his scenario, right, 1/3 in this case, is soft booked. And so I didn't have to open that up to get it, but you can see it's highlighted in gray, and that illustrates that this particular one is soft booked. If you don't use soft booking, that's fine. You don't need to. But again, the concept of giving you some visualizations so you can easily understand, is there a problem or do I even need to? So at this level, if I saw that, Alex was overbooked, you know, or whatever that case, I may see they're overbooked, and then I may look at it and say, oh, well, they're soft booked, so I'm not going to worry about that right now. So we're starting to look at, well, how do I manage this stuff, right? And this stuff is really resources in this case. And so what we heard when we did our interviews with customers is that, you know, number one, and I've showed you that solve, I don't want to have to go to 15 different projects to solve. I just want to manage all my stuff in one place. So we've given you that capability. We've given you the aspect of saying, how do I make changes or manage this? So I can see that there's problems, right? This guy's overbooked, and I can actually make those changes here. The other thing that I want to do, and I'll show you that in a minute, the other thing I want to do is I really want to be able to narrow down, you know, my list of folks. So the first aspect is I said, well, you know what? I can go in here and say, only give me Mark's resources. And I told you that you can continue to add additional scenarios. Well, what if I don't have a rhyme or reason to fit what I need? Well, the other capability that we have is this concept called pinning. And so you can see this little push pin over here, and I have these 3 resources pre-pinned. I could click on Barb and add her back in, and now I have 4. And so what I can do is I can reduce my scenario by looking at the filter, but then I also have this concept of pinning. And so now I've said, well, great, I want to work on these 4 people. One of them has lots of extra time, and 2 of them are overbooked. And so I can manage those specific people. And if I don't want to look at the pinned anymore, if I want to go back to all, I simply click in and I'm seeing all again. So what I've done here is really manage the horizontal view, right? I've taken this out. I have less information, so I can focus on the things that I want. But I still have all of this data over here. And my problem childs are really in these periods out here, right, the 217 capabilities out here. So what I can then do is I can change my telescope, and I can say, you know what, I want to look at 217, and I'll look at through Q4. So now what I've done is I've taken and I've said, hey, let's focus using this telescoping feature based on the specific areas or time frames that I want to visualize. So instead of, you know, I'm getting rid of all the noise. I got rid of the extra people that I don't care about. I got rid of the extra time periods that I want. And now I can look at this and I can adjust and make changes to this. And I can see, and here's Alex, and you know what he's going on. I can look at Lee and see that Lee's got a lot going on with his portfolio initiative during these periods. Could I, in fact, just move that time up? And so the nice thing here that I can do with this view now is I can cut and paste. So if I want to alleviate this, I can just type in that this is now 0, right? I could come over here and say, well, you know what, I actually want to cut this, and I want to paste this to these 2 views. And so I've just changed that to 0. And then I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to change this to 0.8. Right? And I'm going to cut that, and then I'm going to paste it over here. Oh, helps if you cut, but you get the point. And then the value proposition is not only can I do that here, but if I have an outside spreadsheet, I can cut and paste there. And as you saw me dragging over, you know, I dragged to these 2, but if I wanted to drag to those 18, if you will, and I'm just making that up, obviously, the perspective is I could cut and paste groups and areas to make changes holistically across or across whole columns, you know, whatever makes sense for me. So, you know, I have those Excel-like features. The focus here is allowing me to simply manipulate and manage specific periods of time, but also allowing me to, you know, simply enter that information. You know, I used to have to just type. Now I can do the cut and paste capability today. So, you know, we've started through this process to make this simpler for you to manage and allow you to look at the periods that you have, shrink down what you're working on, and then make changes or adapt to that. And then as you see, the colors go away. I had that big green on Alex, and now that color has changed because now he's 90%. By the way, that green was a threshold, and you have the ability to set the thresholds to determine whether it's red or green. you know, what takes it to go to the level that it needs to go based on that. I think the other thing that's interesting here is when I looked at this telescope, I pulled it down for the scenario to say, well, here's what I need to do for solving this problem for these 3 periods. But what I didn't mention, and we'll do this again, and maybe we'll just use this one. One of the other things that we've done here with this telescoping periods, one of the concepts that we heard that people needed to do is when you think about planning or make changes to my resource allocations, we plan in different scenarios. And today, you know, in the classic series, you could change the periods from months to quarters to years, depending on how you set it up. But you weren't allowed to do more than 1 period at a time. And so that concept of planning, which we look at to say, in the near term, I want to look maybe at months or weeks, depending on where I am. In the longer term, I may be interested in quarters or years. You couldn't actually see that all at once. You had to keep switching your view. And so the other concept of telescoping is we're allowing you to actually view the information, but not only view it, but view it in different time periods. So here, the first scenario, right, is monthly, and that's because I chose the last 3. The next one is a quarterly view, and then the final one is for the year of 2018. So these aren't restating each other. These are different periods, so, you know, I can manipulate and change for Alex, if you will, and Matt in this particular period. And then if I wanted to do some more swath level adjustments for future periods, depending on who I am or what I'm trying to accomplish, I have that capability in one place to see all of the components. So what I'm focused on here, right, is I've focused on those resources. So let's open up our investments. We have a little more time periods. You know, I'm getting that visualization. I can scroll through it. Let's see all of my resources, right, going back to that. And then the concept of actually, you know, do I want to look at requests and do more with those? So from a resource manager standpoint, if I'm focused on my resources, I have the ability to look at what's going on individually for the resources, make changes, make the updates here in one place. I have the ability to scroll if I want to keep all of the information on one page. I have the ability to pick out the filter capabilities, and I also have the ability to pin to actually make those changes that I want to do. So ultimate level of flexibility, if you look at what you have today, you know, you have you know, a resource window that may be over or under that says, oh, there's a problem. Then you might go to the resource page and you might make changes there, but then you go, oops, I want to see what the other people on the team are doing. So then you go to the project page to see all the resources on that project. And as you can see, I can see all of that information right here, and I have the capability to filter that information as well. So I'm looking at it now strictly from a resource perspective. I can then change that and look at that from a project perspective. So now I flip my view. It's the exact same information. I still maintain my requests down here. Now I have a filter set up for, to say my, or to see Dana's projects, because I want to see all the project managers of a specific project manager that I'm working on, Dana, because I'm going to manage her resources. And I can see if there were any problems, I would see those up here. I can focus on and see here's the list of values. So this is how you would see it at a project level today. I could add new resources to this list, and I can either search by name. And notice that I typed B, and it gives me Beth Roberts and Billy Brooks, but it also gives me Alan Butler and Adam Benning as well. So we're doing that search, or if I want to search by role, you know, I can do that as well. You know, I can put the different roles in, you know, based on whatever the concept that I have put in, so I can easily add that capability. Now, this is, again, security enabled. So depending on, this is just like adding a resource today, but I have the ability to add those information. That same capability was on the other side where I had resources. I could add projects to them. I didn't show you in that manner, and maybe we'll go back. But the perspective is I have the ability to adjust or add to as I need. It's not just about changing those allocations. I have that capability here to make those changes individually for the folks, you know, and say, okay, well, you know, for this period, I want to change this, and I could cut and paste just like I did before. Now, the other thing that I've done is I focused on this one view, and I'm showing you FTE. And I've showed it for you from both sides of the project view as well as the resource view. And up top, I can say, you know what, I really would rather put that in dollars. And so I have the dollars capability, and I can show both. Or if I want to get rid of the specifics, I can. And now I see this project and these resources, and I see the dollars associated with it, if that makes sense for me. I still, from this view, can get rid of the request, so I can see all the information here. We see some additional widgets here. So as an example, we have this little clock. And as you might imagine, that is Sam has entered time against this particular project. And so it's giving you a visualization of what's going on with this individual. So you might be looking at this and you say, well, you know, you're showing me rates here, Bob, or you're showing me dollars here. How does that work, or what I do? Well, one of the nice things that you have here is this ability to enter a forecast rate. So whether it's here or whether it's at the actual request, you know, you can update and manipulate that rate, not going to the rate table here. That may be coming sometime in the future, but this is allowing you to say, for this particular job, for this particular project, for this particular resource, right, whether it be a request or an addition or the individual itself, I can go in and put a rate that I expect. And, you know, if we take that in concept of a staffing request, you know, I need a cheap resource, right? I don't have much budget, so, you know, whatever that case may be. The other thing that's nice about this is while we have our roles in this, you know, I can update or make changes to this. So I can say, you know what, instead of the very specifics, I can add something to that so that as we go through the process, and actually this I'm changing mark, so I don't want to do that here in a general sense. But if I look, let me go down here. I kind of shifted gears on you. Let me show you this request. This role request, I could put in here where I was going with that is I wouldn't have changed it where I just showed you. I would change it here, and I could say this is a senior business analyst, letting somebody know, you know, while our roles and what it popped up with were business architect, that's great. But I really want to focus on is saying I need a senior one, or you can put some additional comments here in what the role is, as well as what we talked about earlier is being able to have those conversations to add additional detail behind that. And then the other thing is that I have this forecaster rate of 150. Maybe I need to step my game up and I want somebody 180. And I can go through that process as well, you know, for the periods that are out there. So I have a lot of flexibility in being able to forecast cost, not focusing on a table, but saying for this particular scenario, I want to play with cost. Now, I've showed you these couple features here. These are kind of getting into the advanced capabilities of it. You don't have to do this. If you don't want to see forecasted rate, that's fine. You don't need to. The focus here is you have access to it. Another thing is, and I don't have it exposed here, so right now I'm showing you forecast and FTE. If you prefer to do your business in hours instead of FTE, you could have hours show here as well. So the perspective, when we look at these projects that we have shown here, again, I can pin these components. We're going to slice and dice them down. Same as we did on the resource side. If I want to focus on the periods, I can look at this and I can make changes, you know, update my investments. Maybe I know different things are going to happen. You can see that these have comments on them, if you remember that from earlier. I keep saying comments, but they have a conversation thread behind them. And so there's a discussion back there that you can either reply to or whatever. So, you know, the focus is really giving you some information around the resource aspect of it, whether it be from investment to resource, where I'm looking at investments first, or whether it be from resources to investments. The concept is this is all the same information. It's all in one place. So I can see a problem, I can make adjustments to that problem, and move forward. And so in general, that's kind of what I wanted to show today. I'm done a few minutes earlier, but if we want to open the lines up for questions.
That's great. Well, thank you, Bob. That was a wonderful overview. Really appreciate that. We did get a bunch of questions, so I'm going to jump right into them. One was around booking, hard and soft. So let's say the project manager does a soft booking of a resource, and then the resource manager come in and do a hard booking of it. Is that something that's possible?
Exactly. So as we look at this particular scenario, and I have security rights to everything, this particular one is soft booked. And see the booking status. So I represented that it's gray, and so I know it's soft booked. So if Dana soft booked this particular scenario and they said, I want this individual here, I could change the booking status right here based on a security right, and I say that it's hard.
Excellent. If I'm a project manager and I'm looking for resources, am I able to see resources that are not in the projects that I have edit access to, or am I restricted to only see the resources in the project sort of assigned to me?
So you have access to any resources that are out there. So there's the security rights, right? So when I was here, this isn't just the list that are here. If I want to add additional resources, as I showed you a minute ago, if I type B, this is all of the folks that are in the system that I have access to. So I think what the question is you know, in the project, it made me add a person before I could use them as available. In this case, I see the folks out there, but here's the entire list. Now, if some of these are in a different department and I totally don't have access to them, then yeah, I wouldn't have access to them. But you do have access to the host of resources. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, no, that's good. We've seen a lot of color bands and so on across the screens. Are they configurable? For example, you know, if you over allocate, it goes red, I believe. But what if you under allocate? Can you configure that to also be red and things like that?
Yeah, so right now you have some minimum configuration. I'll have to double check on the colors. I don't think they're configurable at this point. What you do have configuration of is the threshold. And so, you know, in general, if you look at what we've done here on the product, not specifically this question, but we've tried to simplify as much as possible, make it so you don't have to flip 75 switches to get the job done. You just want to get in there and do your job, right? And then the perspective as we look forward with the product, we're talking about configuration and giving you more capabilities within that. And how do we keep that simple as well? So that's kind of a future stated scenario that's not in there today, so I don't want to confuse that. But, you know, today what we've done is keep it simple. You know, it's kind of like the, you know, I always like to compare it to like Apple. It's really cool in general, and you can do what you need to do, and they take complex things and make them simple. That's what we're trying to do here. And then as we move forward, we'll give you more capabilities to configure. So right now you can set the thresholds that change them from red to green. I don't believe you can change the colors, but we can follow up on that.
And for everybody who's on this, next month we are going to have our webcast that shows the roadmap for the upcoming releases. So if you're interested in this, you probably just a thrill to see that. Continuing with some questions, if I do some of the great cut and pasting, which I love, it's so easy to use, in the resource management panel or module, is the project manager updated and notified when these changes happen? Is there some kind of alert that goes out?
It would follow the standard alerts. So the concept of today, if you have it set to that field when it changes to send out an alert, it would do that as it has done traditionally. I don't believe there's anything special that we've added in this user experience, but if you have an alert set when that field is updated, it would continue that alert.
Great. Take a couple of more, and it's more of what carries over. Open Workbench has been integrated with CA PPM for a long time. Does that still work in 15.2?
as far as I know, there's no changes to that integration. That's still available as well as Microsoft Project.
That's excellent. There was, in the beginning there, excuse me, you talked about the status reports being created from the data. So a couple of people wanted you to go back to that, maybe to quickly show that again, if you have a second.
Yeah, sure. So Mark doesn't have a lot, so we'll jump back in as Dana. Yeah, so I didn't focus on that simply because it was 15.1, but no worries. So the interesting thing here is that a lot of people spend a lot of time on status reports, right? They go out to PowerPoint because they want this sexy looking component. You know, we have standard reports that are out of the box, and people, you know, ask services and whatever to customize those and the capabilities to change it to be the way they want to do it. One of the attacks that we did is said, how do we make this simpler for people? It's crazy the amount of time folks are spending on it. So what we did is we built the status report, and as an example that it updates, as tasks are added for the next 2 weeks, it fills out this calendar. So I can see, well, what are the tasks coming up? So I'll know that in the next couple of weeks, these are the tasks coming up. As I complete tasks, right, those are here. So if I go over here and on the simple say, secure all rentals, as I update and make that change, then when I look at the status report, that's gonna be listed in the completed task. So my comment to you about the status report is that what it's doing for you is giving you the ability to build out your status, right, as you're doing your job, i.e. I said that task was done, now it shows up here. But then the other thing we found is that really what these are cumulative. So I really want to just take that this status is here, and I'm going to add some additional information. We'll just go like that because I can't spell. And so now I've updated that capability. You know, I have some, you know, if I'm giving this externally and maybe I don't want somebody to see these costs and efforts metrics, I can get rid of those. And that's changed the layout. And then when I preview it, it now is going to publish the status report as a PDF. I can then send that out, and then I have the history. So that's going without the metrics and the calendar down below. And then I have a history of the previous ones as well. So it takes this PDF and maintains this concept of all the different components of the status report. So I have that history as well. So this is a pretty exciting feature of 15.1 relative to status reporting, building out a, you know, quote unquote handsome document that is populated as part of managing the project.
And can you add custom fields to the status page?
Yeah, that's not something that's available today. That goes back to my comment earlier that, you know, we're looking at adding configuration to the product as we move to the future. But today, the capabilities that you have are limited to what I showed you here, which is really allowing me to say, I guess I can just close that. Can I rate myself very well? Limited to the capabilities of saying, you know, what do I want to show? In the future, I think you'll see more here. And, you know, we have a prototype, but that's not the focus of today. But so, yes, down the road, you should see some stuff.
Very good, Bob. I thank you so much for taking the time and show us all this great stuff today. We've got a lot of good questions, a lot of engagement from the audience, so I take it they were interested. I want to thank all of you who came today to watch this and remind you that next month we will do the roadmap overview, which will be just as exciting. If you have any additional questions, hit us up on Twitter at CA PPM, and we will respond to any questions you have there. Well, that concludes today's webcast. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, everyone.